Hello, I'm Janna, and welcome back to the Crafty Corner. Today, we're going to be creating some spring-themed backgrounds with some alcohol inks. If you'd like to see exactly which supplies I'm going to be using, go ahead and pause here. All right, let's head over to the Crafty Corner. Today is all about alcohol inks, and we're going to be exploring a few techniques today to make some spring-themed backgrounds. Now, the first technique that I want to look at is the one that's going to take the longest to finish. We're going to be working with the drip and drizzle stencil technique, and this one does take a while for the ink to dry, so let's start with that one now so we can take a look at the end results by the end of this video. All right. So for stencils today, we're going to be using THS 188, THS 143, and THS 031. What we're going to need today are our alcohol inks, some blending solution, and a good stack of Yupo paper, as well as some glossy cardstock. So let's put our Yupo paper down first, and we're going to start with the sparkly stencil, and let's see what we get. I want to start this kind of over here, and yeah, let's see what this does. Let's see here. Now for colors, I'm kind of thinking I want to do something really vibrant. We're focusing all on spring colors, so I want to do some vineyard, gumball, and glacier. Those are good colors to work with. Now, one thing to do is to make sure that this is going to stick onto the paper. And I'm going to do that by spraying a little dash of isopropyl. There we go. Now everything should stay in place while we drip and drizzle. So we're going to open up our inks, and I'm just going to add some droplets, and we'll see where we end up. I've got some little dry alcohol ink bits. I haven't used these in a bit. All right, here we go. Ooh, that's coming a little faster than I thought. Okay, and let's go with some glacier next. This is going to be really neat. I love this technique. I saw it during one of the many Tim Holtz demos, and this one doesn't disappoint. There's just so many things that can happen, and it's really neat watching the ink just do its thing. So just dripping right onto the stencil, and I'll definitely have to go back and add a bit more ink here and there, and then we will see what happens. I haven't done this particular technique with a very closed stencil before, so I'm curious how this is going to work. This is kind of new, but I think we can get some really interesting results, and I'm kind of thinking that having some of these little open spots could be a good thing as well, so I'm going to leave a few of them open, and we'll see what happens. Okay, I am pretty happy with that. So now I'm just going to press just a little bit here, because I do want the ink to kind of seep out the edge of the stencil, just so that background is going to be pretty well covered. I can always get this to move later with more isopropyl, but right now, I think we're good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this up, and we're going to set it aside on a flat surface, and then we can come back later to do a bit of an unveiling. And we're going to do a few more of these before we move on to our next technique. But the main thing right now is to try to lift this with as little disturbance to the stencil as possible. There we go. So we're lifting, and we're moving. And I do have a bit of alcohol ink to clean up now, but easy enough. Got my towel. I'll just give that a quick wipe. Good. So let's go in and do another. Let's go for the larger floral this time. And again, I'm going to spray the back. There we go. And we will see what happens. So for this one, I already know I want lots of yellow. And I'm thinking we'll bring in some Laguna and maybe even a little bit of mushroom, maybe a dash of monsoon. Okay, so let's start adding ink. So I'm just doing a few drops here and there, and we're going to let the stencil do a lot of the work. So little drips here and there, we'll see what happens. I'm very curious. Now a little bit of mushroom, I think. Just a little bit of grunge. Oop, that's really strong. I'll have to go light. You know what? I think I only do want those 3 colors. I'm liking that a lot. All right, let's go back with the dandelion. That is really looking good. I like it. So just trying to fill in some of those white spaces, and we'll see what happens. This is going to be really cool. Good. I think we've got some pretty decent coverage here. All right. So on average, I found that these tend to take upwards to 30 minutes to completely dry. And the more dry these are, the better a result you're going to get. Because the ink is going to pool as it dries, and the stencil is kind of going to stick to those spaces and leave behind this really neat image. So again, we're going to pick this up very carefully and set it off to the side to dry. And then we've got one more background to create, and then we'll move on to our next technique. Okay, so let's go ahead and move this. Okay, let's see. I like this side. And I do need to spray that. Good. All right, let's see. Start dripping and dropping. And now we're going to be going in with some pink sherbet. This is a nice light color. It's kind of got a little bit of mauve going on here. I like that. There, just kind of filling in all the little holes of the stencil. Then I'll go in with a dash of Laguna. Okay, pretty good. Yeah, this is looking great. I am loving the results already. Okay, I think we are looking good. Oh, want a little bit more right here and there. Cool. All right, so it's time to let this set and dry, and we'll see what happens when we come back later. So I'm just going to carefully take my nail and try to pull this up. There we go. I want that stencil to stay put. Good. And again, I've got a little bit of cleanup to do. Now, let's go ahead and create a few backgrounds. We're going to need some extra backgrounds for a few other techniques today. So what we're going to do, we're going to take some Yupo paper, and now I'm going to be bringing in the blending solution. And we're going to need that to help move around our inks, as well as the Tim Holtz ink blower tool by Ranger, which would be this. So remember with this, we just want light squeezes. We don't need to squish this and get a whole funnel of air, just nice little puffs of air to help move the ink around. All right, let's go ahead. Got our blending solution here. Now let's play. So I'm going to start with some pink sherbet. Then let's go in with a few drops of Vineyard. I don't need a lot. This is a really strong color. And a few drops of bubblegum. Gumball. Oop, that's pretty strong too. Don't need a whole lot. I really like the pink sherbet. All right. So now I'm just going to take the ink blowing tool and we're just going to move the inks around and see what we get. If things don't move, we just add more blending solution and keep things going. Like right there, I did not have any blending solution, so this is not going to move until we add some. There we go. It's nice and floaty. We're just doing little puffs of air, getting this to move all around, and we'll see what we end up with. This is going to be great. I do love just inky play, exploring, playing with color combos, and spring. There's so many bright colors, so many choices to choose from. There we go. That's looking interesting. So now I'm just going to kind of keep moving this around and let the colors kind of do what they're going to do, because right now is the chance when we're going to get some really neat blends and maybe even some little waves. But we have to just keep this moving around, because if we let it settle, it's going to just start drying in one spot, and I kind of want a bit of motion to go with this. So I'm going to need to keep the air flowing. And again, we're just still continuing with little puffs of air to keep everything going. All right, let's go ahead and put this on fast forward as we finish up this background. Now we're going to create 3 more backgrounds, but we're going to put these on fast forward. But let's go over the color combos first. So first color combo is going to be Gumball, Vineyard, and Laguna. Then we're going to look at Laguna, Mojito, and Glacier. And our final mix will be Gumball, Dandelion, and Glacier. So we've got some fun combos to work with. And yeah, let's dive right in. Let's take a look at some of the backgrounds we just made. So the last one that we did is a rainbow gradient. I wanted to do a beautiful color blend, and then we added some visual interest with some isopropyl splatters. So we've got this. It's very cool. Love the kind of galaxy look going on here. It's going to make a great background. All right, so another background that we did, this one was the middle one. This is kind of ocean colors. We've got some pretty blends going on. I like the movement that we have here. And then we have our jewel tone background, and that is just very moody, very dreamy. That's probably going to be my lift background. I love it. Okay, so before we move in to lift ink, I wanted to take a moment to look at alcohol ink glossy cardstock. Now this has several interesting properties for us to explore. So let's make a couple of backgrounds, and then we're going to do a little bit of archival ink stamping. So the first background, I'm going to try to do kind of a rainbow background like we did earlier, just so we can kind of compare how these two substrates are different. From what I can recall, Yupo paper, if you mess up, you can wipe it down and start all over again. Glossy cardstock, once it's down, and it's not moving as much. You can get some pretty good color play, but the ink tends to seep into the surface. It's pretty porous and it likes to grab onto the inks. So let's go ahead and start adding our blending solution, and then we'll go in with some ink and see what we get. So I'm going to try to do this pretty much the same as I did that first one. We've got our ink, we've got some puddles going. All right, now we need to grab the blower and start moving this. One thing I do remember with this, like once the color starts going, you have to move relatively quickly, otherwise it's going to start to set. Yep, there we go. Yep, once that's down, that really doesn't want to get back up. Interesting. Yeah, that yellow, now that it's down, it just does not want to travel. So let's add a little bit more color and see if we can't get those to blend just a bit. Okay, I'm starting to get my green, but man, that color does not want to move. It is interesting. Like, I can already tell that I've really saturated this paper because it's kind of going through. It's like you almost have to be a little bit more light-handed with the alcohol inks and the glossy cardstock. It's interesting. You can't really flood it in the same way that you do the Yupo. All right, I'm still trying to get that nice little blend over here and get some purple. Let's see what we can do. There we go. But wow, it does not want to move that much. Okay, all in all, not bad. I like what we have, but now I just need to move this around so that I can try to get some of that wet ink off the surface. Okay, I think this is pretty much dry. I've been pushing the extra ink off of the cardstock with the ink blower tool because it just doesn't want to dry as fast. But I am interested by what we have. All right, I do want to do the little ISO spray, and then we'll bring the two backgrounds together and just see what the differences are. I like both of them because they do different things. All right. Light spray. Ooh, I don't like that at all. That's pretty bad. But I should be able to just blend that out. All right, slightly better, but seriously, not great. So here are the two backgrounds. Here we have the lovely ISO droplets, very pretty, and we've got some lovely transitions. This is a lot more dreamy, which is interesting. I feel like this has like a little bit more punch to it. The edges are a little harsher, but here it's kind of dreamy and floaty. And as you saw, the ISO it was not gonna do anything good. So I tried to blend that out. I love both of these. They are fun, they're bright, but the results to get they're pretty different. This paper really wanted to just absorb the ink, and as we know, the Yupo is just going to let everything float and blend and mix, and this, it was kind of a battle to get some of the colors to mix together. But either way, I still like the end result. It's very pretty. And it's still pretty glossy. All right, I'm going to set that aside, and we'll let that dry. Let's do one more background while we're here. And I want to try to do a lighter background. Thinking we might do some Chronicle and some Monsoon. I want to do a light background that we could easily do some archival ink stamping on. All right, so let's put down our blending solution. We'll drop in our Chronicle first. And a dash of Monsoon. Okay, let's get that ink moving and see what we get. And right now I'm mostly just focused on movement, because as soon as it starts to dry, it is going to dry and I won't be able to move it at all. The cardstock, it's so ridiculously porous that once it starts to absorb, that ink is not going anywhere. Okay, I think we need a little bit more blending solution. Add that in, and I definitely want some more Chronicle. All right, let's see what we got. So we're just trying to move this around, get a little bit of texture, and just see where we end up. It's definitely harder to get a good flow on this paper, but I still think the end results are pretty cool, and it's going to look neat when we start trying to do our archival stamping. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So we're going to let this dry, and then we're going to be doing some stamping on Yupo and archival inks, and then some on the glossy. Now we're going to be doing some stamping with some Distress Archival ink. For our Yupo background, we're going to be using this one, and for our glossy background, we've got this beautiful one. For stamps, I'm going to be pulling in a favorite. This is Ledger Script CMS 241. And for my second stamp, I decided to go with Vines and Roses CMS 298. Let's go ahead and stamp on Yupo first. Okay, that is looking pretty good. We're just going to flip this over and stamp. This should make a great background to play with. So, good firm pressure. It's a big stamp, so I do want to make sure that I've got good pressure on all the different parts. All right, let's take a look. There we go. And that is lovely. That will make a great background. Okay, so let's set that aside for the moment, and we're going to bring in our second background. This is the glossy cardstock. Let's go ahead and ink that up. Okay, and stamp. And lift. Pretty good. Let's go ahead and stamp that again. We've got space. There we go. That looks great. Now, the neat thing about the glossy alcohol ink cardstock is that it is so porous that even after we've added our alcohol inks, the archival ink still wants to just sink right into the paper. So that background is not going anywhere. I think that is really cool. And let's just take a second look at the one done with Yupo paper. So with this, I don't know if you can see it, but the ink is actually still kind of wet. So I'm going to want to dry this off with the Ranger Heat tool. The problem with the U-Pull, even though the archival ink will stick to it, it tends to want to hover on the surface, but no big deal. We can just dry this off. Now, the main thing about using archival ink is that it's going to stay put. So if we go over here to this little flower and I run my finger across it, it's not going anywhere. There's nothing coming up either on my finger, which is good. And the same with the glossy cardstock. It is not going to want to move. So that is stamping with archival with alcohol ink backgrounds. Now let's move on and have some fun with lift ink. For our first lift, we're going to be pulling in this vibrant background, and we're going to be lifting with the other stamp from Vines and Roses. This again is CMS 298. We're going to be using this side this time. So we've got our stamp, we've got a block, and now we just need the alcohol lift ink pad. Now, the most important thing is to try to get your stamp as clean as possible before attempting a lift. I have scrubbed over this one several times with archival remover and with some water, but I've used the stamp so many times with these two colors that it's kind of stuck this way. So we've done our best. Now we can just ink it up and lift. The other thing that we're going to need will be a clean paper towel. One without texture is best, because we'll need that as we start lifting up the ink. So we're going to take this and we're going to lay it down. And we'll hold that a moment or two, give the ink a chance to do its job, and then we will lift that up. Now, we're going to be getting a lift onto the stamp as well, and we might as well include a second print since we're already here. So I've got some Distress White Heavy Stock that we're going to be adding the lifted ink to. Okay, seems pretty good. We'll just carefully peel this away. All right, and you can already see that we've got some ink that's lifted away. This is going to become even more noticeable after we've brought in our paper towel and done a little work on it. But right now, let's go ahead and drop our stamp down and see what we got, because now we should get a beautiful transfer. Okay, let's see what we get. Gorgeous. That is an absolutely gorgeous lift, and that's going to make a great background later on. So we're going to go ahead and lift our other background, and then we're going to kick things on fast forward as we start to dab and reveal the beautiful lift. So for our second stamp, I decided to pull in an old favorite. This is Fabulous Flourishes, and it is CMS 070. So let's go ahead, add our ink, and stamp this. Okay, good firm pressure, and then we'll lift this off. All right, let's go ahead and kick everything on fast forward as we start to dab and lift. Let's take a look at our lifted backgrounds. So as you can tell, there is quite the contrast from what we saw after we'd initially stamped the lifting to what we've done since we've been rubbing with the paper towels. And the ghostly reveal, I find this amazing every single time. Now, if you notice right here, some of the lift didn't quite lift all the way, but the sections where your ink is really thick, the lift ink is going to have a bit more trouble eating through all that ink to get to the layers underneath. But I like the imperfections because that makes the backgrounds a lot more interesting. And again, you can see that same sort of thing, like we have inky buildup over here, but then we've got some really vibrant line work over there. Either way, I am super happy with the results of these lifted backgrounds. Okay, now let's take a look back at those stencils that we were working with earlier for the drip drop technique. So this was with CMTHS 143, and let's see what we've got. Ooh, pretty nice. It's very, very vibrant. It ended up a lot more green than I expected. I was hoping for a bit more yellow, but it's still pretty neat. That could be really fun to die cut some things out of. All right, well, let's see about this one. This is THS 188. That's fun. Again, it kind of ate some of the other colors. I was hoping for a bit more of that blue to come through, but I like the texture on here. That is interesting. All right, and our last one. This is THS 031. Now, this is really, really interesting. This is going to make a great background piece. You can see almost all the flowers individually, but again, something is going on with the color and it's just kind of being swallowed by the purple. But either way, I still love the end result. Very cool. Now, these stencils are definitely a mess, but this is not going to be overly terrible for cleaning because all we're going to need is some isopropyl. And as you can see, that's going to re-wet the ink and allow me to do a cleansing with this. Now, the one thing is your stencils may be a little stained after, but you know what? That's fine. As long as I don't have any of the inky buildup on there, I don't care what color the stencils end up. And let's go in with a second shot. Not bad. It's a little purple, but the stencil will still work beautifully. And I'm just going to do the same with all the other stencils, and that's my cleanup for these. Very easy, and with the paper towel, it's really not that bad for mess. Okay, not terrible. All right, so those are the main techniques that I want to explore today. Now, let's pick a few pieces and see about making a card to wrap up this video. So for our card, I've decided to go with this as part of our background, and I'm going to be pulling in some of the ideology backgrounds as well, and we'll do a bit of a layered card. The main focal point that I want to use is going to be from Sizzix, and this is Brushstroke Florals 2. So I already die cut my pieces, and I die cut the flower twice, so I could mix and match parts and pieces. I decided to go with a bright yellow flower, but with some golden accents. So let's just quickly glue this together. We've got a bit of collage medium, and we can just do some very quick assembly. So the nice thing about this die is that if you look at it closely, you can see these debossed lines in here, and that tells you exactly where you're going to put all of your little cutout pieces. Definitely one of my favorite things about many of the Sizzix dies. So easy to put together, so easy to follow without necessarily going through step-by-step directions. So I'll just take this next piece, and this is going to go over here. Just following the lines. Now I've got this larger piece. Add just a little bit of glue to the back. Now, if you don't want to mess around with glue, you definitely could go in with a Xyron, or you could use some double-sided sticky tape. I was in a hurry, so I decided glue would be the quicker way to go today. And now we've got these two little accent pieces. That's just going to go right here. There we go. And one more little one over here. All right, now we just need to add the center of the flower, and then we can assemble the card. I am loving the golden accents on here. It makes this very pretty. And I just need to maneuver that. Oh, that does not quite look right. There we go. Alright, so I'm just going to set this aside. We'll let it dry and we'll come back in a little bit. And I'm also going to pull in some leaves. We have this piece right here. This is going to be great. We're just going to chop this up and make a whole bunch of leaves with it. So we'll be back in just a moment after we've die cut a whole bunch of different leaves out of that green alcohol inked background. So we've got all sorts of things to play with when we start the assembly process. So let's put our die cuts aside for the moment and let's start building the base of our card. So I've already got my background at 5.5 by 4.25. Now I just want to trim this part down as well. And I decided to pull in the tonic decal trimmer for this. So we're just going to move this over about 3.25. And we're going to chop that. There we go. Now we've got that great deckled edge. And now we can build. So I'm just going to take this. We've got our ATG tape. And let's add that to this. So I'm just lining up to the left-hand side and placing that down. There we go. Now the next thing that I want to do is to add some trim. And I've got this beautiful velvet trim, and we've got a lovely shade of purple. So we're just going to take that and stick it on top of the ATG tape and run that down. Beautiful. Now I just need to quickly trim that, and we'll be on to the next step. Okay, and the Ideology Velvet Trim, that is still available, and it is a fun little thing to add to cards. Alright, let's finish our build. Oh, you know, I think I want to do my border first. Yeah, I'm going to do the border first. Alright. So, I'm going to work our way around the card. I've got some decorative washi tape to include. Oh, I need to do a quick little trim at the top. Just a little bit of the Yupo paper sticking out over the edge. And I've got some Ideology decorative tape. This just has some numbers on it. I thought the black would go really well with the color scheme that we've got going. So I'm just going to carefully lay that down. And we're going to work our way all the way around the card. I should have done this part first, but you know what? I can easily lift up that trim. Or do I want to go over it? I'm not sure. Probably over. You know what? I think I did do this in the right order. Let's just go for it. So just carefully lining things up and running that tape. Very good. And turn. Run another line. Smooth down the extra edges of tape. Place some more numbers. Great. Yeah, I don't know. I just love a good washi border. I always find that it anchors a card and just kind of frames out whatever work you've got going. So, one of my favorite ways to finish off a card. And last side. Excellent. Okay, so there is our border. Now let's go ahead and add our flower. And I think we'll secure that with a few pieces of foam square. And then I can tuck some green leaves in and around the beautiful flower. Okay. There we go. Get that out of here. Yeah, I'm really happy with that. Very cool. All right, now for some leaves. So I'm just going to add a bit of collage medium, and we'll start placing some leaves in here. Don't really have a rhyme or a reason to where these are going. We're just placing leaves until it looks just about right. One of the nice things about die cuts is that you can move them and create, and there's so many different options for when you're die cutting, so many different substrates that you could cut. And I love that we're able to cut Yupo. That adds a lovely touch and variance to a card. Okay. And I think we are just about done. We're just going to need a sentiment to finish off this card. There we go. Got that little leafy piece. Took that right about there. All right. We just need a sentiment and that card will be all done. Decided to go with a sentiment from the vintage letter tape, and there we go. This is a cheerful hello. I almost forgot, I wanted to add a little bit of shine to the corners. So I'll just quickly add in our drops of glue, and now that card is going to be completed. I just wanted to tie back in a little bit of that extra shine. And to do that, of course, I'm bringing in my favorite, droplets. Here is our completed card featuring Distress Alcohol inks. Let's take a look at all the other fun things that we've been working on today. Today's been all about exploring alcohol ink and having a good play with a variety of colors and techniques. We made some backgrounds featuring Yupo paper, and we've had a chance to play with glossy cardstock. We've done some lift ink. We've done some stamping and some play with stencils as well. We even had a little bit of time to do a little bit of die cutting to get these beautiful leaves. Thank you so much for joining me here today at the Crafty Corner for some alcohol ink play. Until next time, happy crafting.